What's up, everybody? This is John from Coding Addict, and welcome to another Power Hour live stream. And today we have a very cool show for you, a different show where we'll talk all things Strapi. And as always, I'm joined by one and only Mr. Paul Bratlovsky, the mastermind behind YouTube channel Coding After 30. How are you, Paul?
Pretty good. Hey, everyone.
And needless to say that you're probably excited about this episode, since out of two of us, you're
100%, 100%.
definitely the biggest fan of Strappy. And like I just said today, we've got a special show where we have first guest, we have Daniel from Strappy here to answer some of our questions and tell us more about the latest Strappy version. Basically, Strappy just released its latest and greatest version, version 4. So we thought it would be really cool to have someone from Strappy on the show so we could find out more. How are you doing, Daniel? Thanks for coming on.
I'm good. I'm good. How are both of you?
We're
Very good.
doing,
Thanks.
yeah, thank you. Do you want to give us a little intro of who you are, what you do, and all of those things?
Yeah, sure, of course. I'm Daniel Madalitso Phiri. I'm developer relations lead at Strapi. I've been doing this for, not a long time, about 3 years, and I really like it. Engaging with, talking to developers. Besides that, on the technical side, I really like all things GraphQL, Vue, JavaScript, and of course, Strapi. I'm very, very excited to get to answer all of your questions around the new version that we have out.
And let's just start with kind of a base question. So, for someone who's just starting out as a front end developer and entering the wild, wild west of headless CMSs, what would be your 5 second pitch for the Strappy? Why they would go with that?
My 5 second pitch. I've used this on another podcast and it rhymes, so I really like it. Want to be happy? Go with Strappy. Um, but yeah, I was like, 5 seconds, maybe not enough
I
time, but
mean,
I'll give you
that was
one.
kind of. Sorry, I was just over
Yeah.
exaggerating. It was more like I was trying to say like in general, like your what's the name for that elevator pitch? You know, the 5 minute
Yeah,
when you
elevator
talk
pitch.
to somebody. I can give you an example. So for me, like working with students, it definitely has been the case where what I found, and this is something we have talked to Paul about it a lot as well about Strappy, where it covers three things. It's really nice to learn the REST API using Strapi. It's also really cool that you guys have auth right away in place. So the person who's just kind of getting a hold of the front end, they can right away see the tokens exchange and all that. And documentation is exceptionally well. And the way you have the content set up, where you essentially have a nice GUI and all that. So that would be kind of my elevator pitch. What about you?
That's a pretty good one. I'm stealing that one, but like the one I had before the one before stealing yours was like if you need to have a scalable backend solution and create or customize your an API like off the bat, Strapi is like your go-to application. Also because it's Node.js based, you have the options to have a REST or a GraphQL API. Like you said, you have auth out of the box. You have a bunch of providers that can help you log in. You can do user management. You can restrict access using tokens. And you have a lot of relational databases to pick from. So it's pretty flexible.
Yeah, and what I like about is the customization that developers have, like literally limitless to what you can accomplish. So that's awesome.
I feel like that can be a bad thing sometimes because when we have people ask questions and they're like, hey, do you have this feature in Strapi? And they're like, no, not yet. And someone just like customizes the thing and builds whatever. And like every time someone asks, can you do this? It's like, oh, okay, maybe we can like figure out a hack somehow by like messing with the backend and we'll have this feature regardless. And it, yeah, sometimes it's like, we'll wait for someone to make a hack.
So we were talking about how customizing or making like hacking some sort of functionality that does not natively exist, I guess, could be a bad thing. But I like from the standpoint of how you allow people to hook into the controllers and services and kind of following the proposed methodology that you have in your docs. to add, additional behavior and stuff like that. I'm assuming also in version 4, I guess the way you change up plugins to allow people to add additional customization via plugins where it doesn't interfere with like the core features of Strapi.
Yeah, that is true. I've used, I mean, of course, both version 3 and version 4 of Strapi, and I work for Strapi, and it took a considerable amount of effort to get a plugin up in V3. I had to read a lot. We at first did not document that enough, and then eventually we did work work around making resources around that. But with version 4, I think it's one documented way better. Documentation team has done an amazing job. Two, it's a much better developer experience. You start with the CLI, you name your plugin, you have like great resources for how to actually add that to your application, and then you can hook a lot of the functionality inside that plugin that you're creating to access a lot of the internal, like you mentioned, the controllers, the services,
Yep.
the database, and access a lot of those and handle that data in that plugin. Plus, one thing I like also that's super cool is being able to have that plugin data fed into the admin UI and being able
Right.
to like interact with the Strapi core from that plugin. I find that really really nice in terms of like customization, and it's like really endless. Like we had an event I think 2 weeks ago where one of our and I'm not sure if like you're familiar with the editor view. So you've got this view where like you're editing content, right? So maybe this is like a blog post that's supposed to come out, and then we created a plugin that helps us tweet like the description of a blog post. So whenever you
Yeah.
just click that, it sends you directly to Twitter. It creates like the tweet intent. And that's just like a tweet you can make where it grabs the data that you already entered for that entry. Like it's a blog post that's already published. But let's say your social media team wants to, tweet that without having to, retype that, or, you know,
Right.
you just have that plugin where you just say tweet this description and it does exactly that. And that's just like touching the surface of what you can do with like the new plugin API, and how easy it makes it. I really like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And then from standpoint, like anybody who's moving from version 3 to version 4, they would have to uh, create the plugin or like using the new documentation since the old code is probably not going to work.
Oh no, actually, with the plugin, we have a really nice migration guide that helps
Okay.
you take your plugins from version 3 to version 4.
Oh,
The
nice.
format's changed a bit, and most of that is like just like files changing. And one of
Yep.
our community members created a really interesting CLI tool with the Strapi team, like a code mod that sort of like does a lot of the heavy lifting for you in terms of like the the tasks that you don't want to be doing, and renaming all the files, moving them in different
Yep.
directories and folder structures. And it does that. Then all you have to do is like go into your Strapi repo, and I think the only thing that's a bit different is you have to go to your routes and change the plugin name from kebab case to camel case, and
Okay.
actually like activate your plugin inside the Strapi app config, and then um, should migrate it.
Hmm. And I've been kind of following Strapi since alpha, and what I've noticed that you always guys have been on a forefront of like coming up with those unique features, right? I believe you were one of the first ones who set up that repeatable type when you're creating content.
Yeah.
I don't remember at the time when I
The
was using
dynamics of
different.
it.
Yes, I believe so. Essentially, where you can like make it like a little component where instead of repeating it all the time, but you can set it up as a component. What is with version 4 something that you kind of want to share that you really guys are proud of as far as like, look, this was Strappy all the way to 4, but because for me it seems like you guys always have been on that forefront of adding those unique and new features kind of first ones. So I'm just
Yeah,
really curious, what is it that you want us to know about Strappy 4 as far as that?
that's a big question. I could do like a 5 second pitch, but with version 4, I wouldn't highlight one particular thing about Strapi. I think it's a really huge project where we've just changed a lot of how we do things and make it much more performant, make it much easier, and also just introduce a lot of new concepts to the Strapi ecosystem and build on a lot of those that we saw worked. Um, Just like real quick, I love the new design system. I feel like that's super big. Like I mentioned, we're like getting way into customization and being able to extend your Strapi application. And we really believe that we have to provide developers with the tools they need to do that, from design to shipping this thing and using it in production. We have a UI kit on Figma, a component library, React component library. So whatever customizations you make look exactly like it was built by the Strapi team, and everything is like consistent aesthetically. We have really done a great job with the new query engine. It's super cool to use. I wouldn't say easy because you have to sort of know different components of Strapi. But once you do know, like, services, databases, query, and then you'll be able to sort of like pick out what that does and then use that to sort of create your own functionality for deriving data directly from the database. Plugins I've already talked a bunch about. API tokens, we've shipped that, and it's still very early on, and we're looking for a lot of feedback on that, but we're very excited about that feature also. Error handling, because I think in the past, and if you've customized the Strapi application in V3, when things went wrong, it was sort of like, okay, what happened? Like, where do I? It's a bunch of console logs, and you're like, that doesn't uh, work really well in production. And with the error handling API, we've made it much easier. Whenever you customize things, you can actually build out, like, with proper um, what's the word, um, rules and conventions. Send the right errors that use, like, the standard HTTP errors for APIs, and you can send those to your application. And whenever you do something that you're probably not supposed to, you are aware. So
Yeah.
there's a whole lot that we've done, and like the whole project is something that we're all super proud of, and I think this is just the beginning. Um, and the intentions behind this, release were setting us up for doing more. I think V3 sort of reached its limits in terms of adding really complex features to Strapi that would really help people out. And I think we pushed it when we pushed like internationalization, and I think the engineering team realized, like, well, we need to change how we handle things in the back, and how we help people customize, and that's sort of what inspired V4, and V4 is the foundation for that. And now, like, we've built something really performant, a strong foundation. Now let's start to build around that, and add value to developers and content managers. So that I think in itself is something to be very proud about.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm like such a big fan of Strapi. I hope you guys keep doing, all the good work that you guys doing. I want to continue to promote it to everybody I talk to. Like my goal is to become like a better Strapi expert than all of you guys, that one day I could apply for a job and be like, yeah, let's do it. But speaking of
Hey, we're
plugins,
hiring. Apply
oh,
it.
nice. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put you as reference. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I will, of course. But anyways, more serious note. With the plugins, are you guys going to do like a plugin store, or like some sort of like place where other users who have created plugins could easily share them amongst other Strapi users, kind of similar to
Yeah.
like WordPress themes?
Yeah, we are building a marketplace. We announced it, like, literally the marketplace that we're working on it a couple months ago.
Yep.
Last week we had like an event where we actually announced that people can start to submit their plugins. We released guidelines for what we're looking for when you
Right.
submit your plugins, and what will get your plugins into the store. So you did not hear it from me, but sometime next year
Yeah.
maybe in the earlier months, something might come up.
I have a kind of two maybe very specific questions, but like first one is so when I was checking the docs and when I was also testing out, so at the moment people need to use Node 14, correct? Or there's a workaround with Node 16. There's
Um, it's something that we're working on. There's like, from what I, from the conversations I had, there's a certain dependency that just breaks things on Node 16 that we're working on fixing, and it's coming
mm,
soon, I hope. But yeah, I don't know. Is that something that's very important?
no, it's just something that I don't know how to like. You're probably familiar how especially when someone's starting out, they try to always go with the latest version of whatever is available. And basically,
Yeah.
this is the question that I'm getting because I use Strapi in my Gatsby course, and this is the question that right away was popping up when the version 4 rolled out, and I was just making sure that we covered that base. And second, also a question as far as the Gatsby in this case the plugin, let's say more specifically, is it out of date already? Let's say the previous one, or are there any changes between the Gatsby plugins that pull out from the Strapi? Have you guys updated that one already, or not yet?
No, no, not yet. It's something that the expansion team is working on. We have what is it called? The Gatsby Strapi source plugin. And that's the one that we sort of maintain that we're working on getting to work with V4 right now. An alternative, though, is to use the Gatsby GraphQL source plugin. That way you can just get that GraphQL data and um, put it into your Gatsby app.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people do that even before V4. So it's a quick fix for now while we work on shipping the official
I
one
know
out.
that Paul has a bunch of opinions because he uses the GraphQL actually on his setup. That's for sure.
No, yeah, that's one thing I like about Strapi. Not that you have to go that far, but like if you have your GraphQL endpoints, you could literally have a bunch of different applications if you wanted to. Like you could have your website, you could have a mobile app that could be powered by like the same API. Not saying that you have to, but the fact that you can, that's pretty amazing. But one thing I was going to ask is our current application that we're building, we started a while ago, so it's using version 3, and we obviously want to updated to version 4. And I know last time I checked, you guys did not have a guide on that. Is that something that's
Yeah.
still in the works? And if so, like, you guys have an expected release date for that update?
Yeah, great question. You wouldn't, I mean, of course, you'd think it. We get that question a lot. We don't have a migration guide out yet, but I can assure you there's people working not literally day and night, but day and night to get that out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's coming sometime early next year. So um, once everyone's back from the holidays and they've just caught up with everything, then we'll probably have that ready for.
And if someone's trying to kind of decide, what, like, why they should use Strapi from the standpoint of like who's your ideal client or who you're aiming, that application at. Is it the individual? Is it marketing agencies? Is it
Yeah.
just anybody who wants to have a pleasant experience building a backend as a front end developer?
Yeah, I feel like we don't like to restrict the use case. I think in certain perspectives and certain conversations, it's great to do that. But honestly, we see a lot of people use Strapi for so many things. And if it solves your problem, why not?
Yeah, yeah,
So that's sort of our approach to, targeting people. It's a very versatile tool, and limiting it to a certain scope is doing a lot of people a disservice. So we don't want to do that.
And as far as
yeah, yeah.
the headless CMS world, like kind of space, you seem to be one of the only ones who are like set up on a local computer, right? I'm not sure. I haven't used Keystone. Is there any other that or
Keystone's local.
Keystone is
I think
local?
there's yeah, and as directors also, they have a
Yeah.
cloud though, so.
So
There's a couple.
Is that some?
yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. No, 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 go ahead. You
I was
probably have the same
I,
question.
I was gonna yeah, I was gonna say, is that the plans for the future to have a cloud Strapi solution?
A lot of people have asked for it, and it's definitely something on our mind. Still too early to say if that's actually something that will happen, but um, I've seen a lot of other people sort of create, weird enough, like create actual companies around, sort of like hosting, hosting Strapi as a service. So
Yeah,
I would not be surprised if that does happen for us. But yeah, we're still a bit too early to say that. But yeah, watch that space.
yeah, and I know you mentioned Keystone. Coming back to this question now, who are your greatest competitors that you're looking to compete against, and what would you say your market differential is that makes you stand out and give people a good reason to choose you guys?
Hmm, that is a good question. Competitors, I would say, like the biggest competitor is not a single company, but an idea rather of like how you build or how you manage content. And I think we're really trying to change the perception of how modern teams and how modern developers create and build around content, because literally content is everywhere. And I think the idea that sort of everything should be tied together is sort of against where the web and a lot of the other platforms are going. So I think our biggest competitor is that idea,
So that
if
actually
I would
leads
put
me
it that way.
to a good question. So, I mean, the biggest thing as far as headless CMS is the WordPress, right? So you can think of it
Mm,
as two ways how to make the content. So headless CMS is all about, hey, look, here's the data. We don't care how you get it. And
yeah.
WordPress is pretty much, no, this is how it's set up, and this is how basically you need to work with it. Do you see a lot of people switching from WordPress to Strapi as far as companies, maybe individuals and whatever?
Yeah, we do. We see that quite a lot. And for multiple reasons. There's this opinion that WordPress is an outdated piece of technology. And I think there's a lot of people who dislike PHP for some reason. I personally don't. But yeah, there's like that one reason everyone sort of wants to modernize their stack, and JavaScript is like cutting edge right now, is at least the most popular thing. And everyone wants to sort of align their backend to what their front end looks like. And the majority of front ends these days are, you know, um, built off of modern JavaScript frameworks and libraries. So yeah, we do see people doing that. One thing that sort of like slowed that down was just like if you've used WordPress, a lot of people just like use templates, and you can
Yeah,
reuse a template and change up the content, and it works for a lot of agencies who need to ship a lot of websites out fast. And I think one thing that's helped with that Strapi WordPress comparison is Strapi's ability to sort of do that in a way. You can create templates, one project, and I think this works really well for backends, because if you think about most projects, they are more or less pretty similar, particularly around like blogs or e-commerce sites, um, podcast sites, news websites. Like the backend is pretty much the same, maybe a few changes, which are really easy to make in Strapi because it's also quite visual. And you can literally just copy a project, folder, rename it, install the dependencies, get Strapi running, change up something, and connect that to a database, and you have like a new backend and can get up and running really quickly with building your front end, like your custom front end. So
yeah,
um,
yeah.
either way, in both ecosystems, there's still a significant amount of front end work to be done in terms of customization. So I see it more or less as the same, and a lot of people are sort of looking at that as like the modern way to get things up fast.
Yeah, yeah. For me, like, because I used to work at an agency that built themes with WordPress or customize existing themes with WordPress, and eventually when I started getting into React, I really liked the idea of a headless, CMS. Like before I found you guys, there are a bunch of projects with WordPress. You could have WordPress with GraphQL. I forgot what the exact name for it, where you could have a, WordPress as your backend, and then you could create a front end with whatever you want. But then the more I got into it, like you still have to do a lot of custom PHP stuff. And I was just like, I just want to do JavaScript. And so, and like the upfront work to get that all set up, I was like, you know what? If you're going to have WordPress, just use the templates and don't try to go outside that wheelhouse. And I was like really excited because there's a lot of work to do up front. And I was really excited when Strapi came out with the fact that I could just put whatever front end I want, especially if HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It makes it even easier to now, like I'm familiar with Node, to customize Strapi backend if you had to, because it's all one language. It's all JavaScript. And to me, like that was like really powerful, so I really like that about it. And I don't see myself kind of, going back because, I'm all about JavaScript and to go like, and it's nice when everything is with JavaScript. So I do have a question. I know you guys have the community version of Strapi that's going to be free for eternity. And you also have, the like sometimes like what's the I like lose words all the time.
Enterprise?
The
No.
yeah, exactly. The enterprise version. What are the differences between the two outside of like, you have some sort of like monthly cost associated with that? Like what do people get with that by switching to the enterprise version?
Right, that's a good question. So, yeah, the community version, like you mentioned, free for eternity, however long that is. And the value from what is this? The value from the enterprise version is one, role-based access control. I think that's something very enterprise oriented in terms of like companies at a larger scale that need to be able to restrict access to certain functionalities and certain actions in the CMS. And you can define a lot of different roles and then scope out the actions that are possible for those roles.
Yep.
Out of the box, you can only define 3 roles in the community edition, and the enterprise edition has unlimited ones.
Yep.
So that is one thing. We have SSO also, secure sign-on, so you can integrate with your existing sort of internal tool to be able to sign into Strapi and use Strapi. And what else do we have? Depending on what you want, we have some sort of support service also. You get like a solutions engineer in case you need someone to sort of like quickly get you unblocked if that's something that happens.
Right.
And it happens. And we have a great support team. So yeah, I don't think I've missed anything, have I?
So like if, when you say like support team, I was wondering about that. Like what kind of support you get? Like for instance, if I'm a developer and I get stuck, doing
Yeah,
something and I read the documentation and like I'm like, man, I still can't figure out, it's just taking so much time that I don't have. Would
yeah.
that type of question be something that the support team would handle, or is it more of like customer support in terms of like the general stuff?
Yeah, it's more of like customer support. Like
Okay.
you like general developer in the community edition, you definitely still get some sort of support. We've got a lot of really interesting structures built around our forum, our Discord,
Yep.
Stack Overflow, and like a lot of our support engineers are also on those platforms helping people out, and a lot of our more active community members are also helping a lot of people out because those are things they've faced, and they're more than happy to share solutions with people. But if you are a customer and something goes wrong and you're losing a certain amount of money every second that your Strapi application is down, we do have the um, it's a relief to know that you have the Strapi team to be able to sort of like
Yep.
look at exactly what's wrong and help you get back up and running.
And like the question I have about roles, that is specific to the content management side, like from Strapi UI when you go
Yeah,
into it. Like, but in terms of, let's say, if you wanted to create users, let's say
yeah,
you're gonna from like in your database that you're going to imagine like manage from your front end application. They're not Strapi specific users. You could create that however way you want and create
Yeah.
your own roles and permissions. It's not the user that's the admin, the editor, and whatever the other role right now is,
The author. Yeah.
author, in terms of specifically for people that are going to be using the Strapi UI to manage the content and have specific, rights to certain things that they can or cannot do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true.
I have one regarding like individual developers. So let's say a big like pain point has been the deployment. Like a bunch of people have built
Right.
something locally and everything works really great. And I know Paul is already
I'm
knows where I'm going with this. And there has been some like pain like getting this up like hosted.
So before John finishes, I'm just laughing because like I only had a problem when I had no idea what I was doing, but I've never had issues with deployment. So it's funny, but I do
Yeah.
feel the pain because I do have same like question that John's about to ask. The ease of deployment and having it not have issues like when you do it.
Yeah, so you guys rolled out, I believe, those one-click installs for few platforms. Is
Well,
that
yep.
something that you're basically gonna, I don't know, provide documentation, make sure that it works, that like, because there was an issue where docs are great explaining everything, but
Yeah.
when it was switching between alphas and betas and all that, there was an issue where even if you followed docs to the T or, to everything that you're supposed to, you're still getting back the issues. Is that something that, you kind of guys working on as far as to make sure that it's smooth as possible?
Yeah. That is true. We're working on, or we have worked on rather, a lot of really good migration guides, particularly where you mentioned alphas and betas. And I know like version switches are a bit hard to get past, particularly depending on how like you store your Strapi application, whether or not you use like Git as sort of like the source of truth for building your Strapi application. Yeah, that that can be a bit tricky. One thing that we do have, like you mentioned, is like the one clicks. We we don't have the one on DigitalOcean anymore. We do have Heroku though, and we have a lot of really other cool companies, like I mentioned, that have sort of like built around being able to easily deploy Strapi. There's like platform.sh, there's Covery, there's Render, there's a new one called Cleaver, and a lot of them have really generous offers around being able to deploy Strapi. There's literally one that has Strapi in like a marketplace, and you can just say create Strapi app, and it does that for you. But like I mentioned, the hard part is locally it works. How do you take that local to production? And yeah, I think we're working on having more resources around deploying Strapi apps to different environments, managing those environments, managing and making sure that updates reflect on all your environments the way you want that. So yeah, it's definitely a pain point, particularly because a lot of the people, at least now, who are starting to be aware of Strapi and who want to use it as a headless CMS, don't necessarily have the most experience,
With
doing a lot
deployment,
of
yeah.
Mm.
deployment work. So it's
But
something that we've had to acknowledge and then also work on
but it
presenting content for.
but it's good to know that other like service providers like Heroku, for instance, offer their own support kind of or guide or whatever. And then you mentioned a lot of these other companies that are now making a service around this idea of making, deployment of Strapi easy and manageable. So maybe someone who has hard time, deploying the app themselves or don't even want to manage that process, they could choose one of
Mhm.
those, third-party services to make it pain-free and easy, and I think that's cool. So if someone's like, hey, I don't want to deal with this, there are avenues that they could pursue to have that done for them.
I just have a quick follow up on that one though. So when we're talking about the one-click deployments, does the person need to do any kind of configuration apart from the graphical interface as far as just setting up the content types or whatever, or they have to still manage the whatever they're serving or whatnot?
Yeah, I think that was the issue with like a lot of the one click sort of options that we had, because once you click that, and then this is something that's very Strapi specific. Production Strapi and development Strapi are very sort of two different applications, because you certain functionality is restricted in both. When you're in development mode, you can use the content types builder, you can change your content structure, you can access like your GraphQL playground by default, and you can like mess with a bunch of other things. But in production, that's sort of different. You don't necessarily want to mess with your database tables in production, which is exactly what doing the content, like using the content type builder does. Um, and you out of the box can't use like the GraphQL API. So once you use that one click, it's sort of like launching that into development mode. And that's sort of like, okay, I want to use Strapi and get it up and running quickly. But we found that people were using development mode as production, which is not ideal. So it's like, okay, let's start local and let's help you get from local to actual production. And
Yeah.
that follows like best.
The craziest thing, I think it just comes down to your understanding of DevOps and just having the experience, where most like average developers who are starting out, they might not be as familiar, because at the company that I work at, the guy literally just deployed it to production. And I was like, wow, how? Like, it was like, you made it look so easy. I mean, I think, you know, I think you guys have a good guide, like at least deploying to Heroku. That
Yeah.
I never had an issue with it, and I think, of course, like depending or the service you're going to use is going to have its challenges, but you know, but for me, it has been not a bad experience. So I just want to say, that
That's
like I'm,
it's good to hear. I'll pass
yeah.
that feedback on to the team.
That's pretty much it for me. What about you, Paul?
I was going to say, what are the best places? I know you mentioned like Strapi Discord, obviously the Strapi documentation. Like, what is the best place or a couple of places to be on for anybody who's wants to keep a pulse on what is happening on Strapi and also get help?
I mean, you're probably watching this on YouTube, so I'd say the
Yeah.
YouTube. No, like we've actually, I think we've got a pretty good YouTube channel
Yeah.
that we don't invest as much in, but we are definitely going to change that also next year. I think check out our YouTube, our forum, our GitHub. Lots of interesting issues that would love to get perspective on. Check out our Discord, like Paul mentioned, and yeah, like I think that's pretty much it. Very soon, check out our marketplace. Let
Yeah.
us know
If you guys are looking for any good candidates for like your YouTube, like I'm right now raising my hand, and I am going to check what positions you have openings for. I'll apply because I love
uh,
Strapi
we,
and I
we
wanna
we do
like
have
I
a developer relations
yeah.
opening, so
Oh, nice.
that
Yeah,
could
'cause
be.
I will definitely. Yeah, my full name Paul Breslavsky. I'm gonna send a resume. Like I'm just gonna say right now. But what I was gonna say, like I love Strapi for everything, and John makes a joke. It's like no matter what we talk about,
We always end up on Strapi.
I always end up
Yeah.
with saying Strapi number one, and then I recommend most people with Strapi. And my thought process for this is actually very simple. It's like use Strapi in like until it can't do the job, and like in terms of
You
what
have
I've
to
been
push it
building,
really hard.
like 90% of things like Strapi's been perfect for, and so for me, I'm like, start with Strapi, and if you need like
Mm,
something that Strapi can't solve, because I'm sure there are, of course, cases where Strapi, you know, is not the right fit. Like, you need to use the proper tool, but for majority things that people are building, it's definitely more than enough. So I'm all about like, hey, just use Strapi and make things easier, you know, and the fact that I convinced my boss at my work to kind of go with Strapi and giving a chance, I'm really counting on you guys because you know it's either it's going to be
No
happy or
pressure,
not
no
happy.
pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Yeah,
Thank you.
no, but you guys so far it's been going really, really good. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, Daniel, for coming on. Are there any like last words you want to pass on to the community as far as Strappy 4 or anything else?
Oh, keep building. Check out Strapi 4. Let us know if you have any feedback on stuff that you think we could do better or stuff that you'd like. And yeah, we're hiring for a lot of roles. Like, come help us build this wonderful project.
Awesome,
Nice.
Starting with
awesome.
Paul.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm gonna apply. I'm not even kidding. Strappy number one. That's it. I'm gonna be the. I could talk about Strappy for hours, to be honest with you. So I think
Yes,
for
yes.
customer relationship, like I would be perfect fit for sure. But anyway, great chatting with you
Awesome.
and meeting you. Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you,
Daniel.
Daniel. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks for your
you for
time. Thank
having
you,
me.
Paul. And yep, see you later. See
Thanks,
ya.
John. See you,
Bye.
everybody.